let's rewind 30 years back, Bangalore. Life was in a way simple. There were no smartphones, no laptops, no Netflix, no cable TV. There were trees, houses, children played on the streets, not as much traffic. However, for some people, life was not as simple. There were hardly any awareness on disabilities, especially about autism. Children with autism stayed at home, isolated, misunderstood. There were very few people who knew about the word autism, and there were fewer who even wanted to learn about it. I had quite a few questions which I was looking for answers after having seen them in many places. How is it that a child with autism who could play the keyboard, any song, any language, by just listening to it once, but she needed help with asking to go to the toilet? Why is it that a girl who would scoot from one room to the other and she had no difficulties physiologically with her legs and she needed to be carried? And if suppose, how is it that a boy who could probably say the day of the week if you told him the date, for example, if you said 23rd March 1984, he would say, oh, that was a Friday. But if you wanted to hold a conversation with him, he would have some words which didn't mean anything to us, like he would say dindigol, jokiali, which didn't make any sense to us. I was very curious. This curiosity became my calling. I wanted to know how they see this world, and I dropped in it like a Alice in Autism Land. I enrolled for a course to equip myself, and then this yearning for learning, to know how the rest of the world works with them, this probably the yearning and the positive, probably the intent of how much I wanted to learn, the universe conspired. And it so happened that a US-based NGO who had come to Bangalore looking for train the trainers agreed to sponsor my training abroad. I grabbed it with both hands, didn't let this opportunity go. And as part of this, as I opened each door, I saw a new child. This child who was probably fascinated by the breeze, the rustling of the leaves. Some of them even wanted to taste the breeze. They would stick out their tongue and they would feel the breeze. Was something so unique. The people, the professionals whom I met, they said, if you have seen one person with autism, you have seen only one person with autism. What does that mean? Does it mean that there can't be any standardization for me to be able to work with them? I knew, they said that autism is a lifelong disability. I knew the word disability. I knew I was familiar with visual impairment, locomotor disability, hearing impairment. But here I'm seeing children and adolescents who are so differently unique, and they did not have any disability on their physical appearance. So this, here I would say that the professionals whom I met, and when they were talking about that there can't be, when I thought that there can't be a standardization, I thought that if they are talking about so many problems, I did not see the problems. I saw strengths, I did not see the deficit, I only saw potentials. And this, over a period of time, I wanted to see what happens when someone believes in them, what happens. So it all started 30 years back with a chance volunteering opportunity at a special school after meeting a friend who is also a parent professional. She introduced me to this space, and it so happened that the girl whom I said, she scooted from room to room, and she didn't stand because she was scared of falling, and the doctor said that there is no physiological problem with her. And when I started to work with her consistently, rewarding her for every small attempt that she made, I was getting small little responses from her. And over a period of time, after almost 1.5 years of consistent work, believing in her, making her trust us, one day she stood. All by herself, she stood. We had the mother, the teacher, and the child crying and laughing all at once. That was an aha moment for me, and that stayed with me forever. No flash bulbs, no drum rolls. It was just us. She didn't, I would say, that day just stand. She stood for something. What happens when people believe in the individual? I had found my tools by now. I have understood that patience, belief in the individual, consistent work, unshakable coming together of all the stakeholders, and believing in myself that yes, I can do it. These were my tools. But when I had to work on myself, I realized that if I have to grow my patience, my emotional regulation, it was my self-awareness that I had to work on. And for that, it is much easier to teach than to even practice. So, and I also realized that I have to learn to walk with the families, and that's how the difference will be coming to the children. But as I freelanced, I realized that the families were moving from therapy centers to therapy centers across the city. There were no such direct services for them at that time. So children had no opportunity for any socialization. So when I studied, I understood that they have, for their social skills, if suppose they have, that is one of the major criteria for their diagnosis, then how can the social skill improve within the 4 walls of their rooms or by staying in isolation? So I started Saturday social skill training program in my friend's garage. I gathered the children who came to me, their siblings, and the children from the neighboring slums to start this social competence program. I did not do it under any banner of inclusion to guide me at that time. I did it because that was the right thing to do. Soon the family started asking for more, and the seed of a center was sown. Oops. What was my capital at that time? The belief in the unshakable power of the collective, a sharing of the responsibilities with all the stakeholders for mobilizing the resources. That was how I began. And this constant burning need inside to reach out to children and their families helped me to make this as the objective of the program. Years passed, children grew, the program grew, this center finally became an organization. I started to see beauty in micro gains. Every step was a celebration for us. Every small little step was always appreciated. Parents moved mountains. They moved from pillar to post, not for any applause. They wanted their children to be part of this ecosystem. That's all they were looking for. I also saw lots of families that fell apart when they could not accept the child's reality. So I understood that if I have to reach the child, I have to work with the families. And if I have to work with the families, I realized that when they were empowered, when they were educated, they had the tools with them, they didn't need me as much. So I realized that I have to now make myself redundant. You must be wondering why redundant? Because I had to reach more children and their families. But how? How does one make oneself redundant? I started training people, delegating tasks, made small teams, and slowly, very slowly scaling up. Each child, one at a time, from early intervention to primary education. The spark that my friend who had set now became a clear path for us. It evolved into a not-for-profit organization, a formal NGO. A parent came forward to give the land and the building for us to start. We started the school with a holistic approach. Academics, life skills, and even theater. So why theater, right? You must be amazed. Theater works amazingly well with people with autism for their social learning. A friend of mine, a theater person, she worked with us because she was very aligned with our thoughts, and she worked with our team members and worked with the children to stage multiple productions in one of those top auditoriums of the city. Children with autism learned, they got their voice, the rhythm, the connection when they were working with people, when they were working on the theater. Let's face it that, there is probably all of us have a bit of drama in us, and it was something that each time when the students, they were on the stage facing a house full, it did wonders to their self-esteem, their confidence, and discipline that came into their life. By now, children have become young adults. We wanted to now move into a vocational training space. But at that time, there were not too many references for us to go back to learn about adults with autism. So what did we do? We looked for the international best practices, and we created our own based on person-centered planning, collaborative practices, rooted in the community, making sure each individual interests are the ones which will drive the movement forward. With these, we got into the vocational training space. But what about the financial support? Without finance, how did we move? I am not actually very good with asking friends and people in the network for financial support. But support came in. Do you know how? A crowdfunding from 250 staff members of a mainstream inclusive school came as a huge support for us to start the hospitality unit. Then came the corporate social responsibility support. Then we had the philanthropic initiatives of various foundations. My relying on humanity, or my faith in humanity, was restored again and again. Then came 2020. Yes, COVID. Did we stop? Not even for one day. Do you know how and why? Because by that time, we had become a credible organization. We had a community that believed in us, and we had them as our support. We had learned to ask for help. We had learned to work with other stakeholders, and we knew by then that it is not one person's cup of tea to be able to make a difference to any child and the families. We had built capacity, but now with COVID, we had to build our own capabilities. So we remained afloat, because nowhere in the world you found an answer for how do you survive yourself during COVID. Even though we did well professionally, I faced a huge personal storm. I suffered a partial facial paralytic attack. The doctor suggested, as part of the exercises for my rehabilitation process, to blow out candles, to blow bubbles, to blow balloons, to strengthen the muscles of the face, to be able to speak properly. I could not speak on the phone because people didn't understand. I couldn't speak to people when I knew that I had to speak at length for some time. I restricted my speech and every other activity because I was very conscious, because I would bite my cheek, my tongue, because my alignment was gone. When the doctor suggested the exercises, ironically, those were the same things that I have done for the last 25 years, suggesting to the parents, the families, and the speech therapy unit worked with them, with children with disabilities. But this time it was for myself, not anybody else. My body rebelled. My emotions. It was so hard for me to be able to go through the same emotions that I have counseled parents for years. I was in denial. I asked the same questions that the parents and the families have been asking. So from denial, grief, hatred, anger, shame, disbelief, all of that, I came to acceptance. Not for anybody else, but for myself. I didn't know at that time if this is going to be a temporary disability or it's going to be a permanent one. What kind of rehabilitation will help me to move forward? And what temporary, even if it was temporary disability, I didn't know what residual effect will be there which I have to carry on for the rest of my life. But after years, after 5 years today, here I am, sharing with you people my story. Do you know how this happened? Because there were people who believed in me and they supported me. They made sure that I could reach here to be with you people sharing my journey. And I could do that only because of them. And of course, the same things that I have done all throughout my life, believed in self, worked on self, on my own self-awareness, and the people I believed in, trusted them. Because of that, today I'm able to be here. So, with every child, parent, colleague, and friend who walked this journey, a journey that's always been about becoming a better version of ourselves. Rather, I would say the better version, which is the truest self. The world, in this world, the progress cannot be just competitive, there has to be compassionate. Where each person runs their own journey, not somebody else's version of the race that we need to be into. So I ask you, dear friends and audience who are present here, what is your triumph? You can either go with the flow of the societal expectations or go upstream. You can celebrate who finished the line first, or you can celebrate the people who even got a chance to participate in that race. Today, I stand with each one of you and say that that's the triumph I stand for, and I invite you to celebrate that triumph. Thank you.